Hello and welcome back to Seahawks podcast. I'm Tyler and I'm joined by Matt. And this episode is going to get a little bit dicey. We're going to start talking about some of our predictions for the 2023 season. We're going to look at some of the divisions, some of the teams. We're going to think about who's the best, who's the worst, go into kind of our expectations for the year in general as a whole. And some of our predictions might be a little bit different. You might have some argumentative series throughout this episode, so definitely stay tuned. Our first episode we know was a little bit dry, but we were just getting the swing of things, so hopefully this one will be a lot more entertaining for everybody listening. So to kick it off, let's go ahead and get things started with the recap of the preseason. Matt, how'd you feel with the end of everything going on?
Felt like especially the last week it was mostly just especially finding out those division battles, letting the rookies or some of the starters getting a drive or two in before the start of the season, making sure that nobody gets injured, which there were some injuries sadly. Thing that was especially interesting was seeing Aaron Rodgers have a drive or two with the Jets versus the Giants game and seeing how he
Absolutely.
played. So we'll see how that goes into the regular season, but it was actually interesting to see him play a game.
Yeah, definitely great to see him out of a Packers uniform, and it'll be even better to see him in a Vikings jersey next year.
The probably biggest news today, finally finishing out preseason. Colts not trading Jonathan Taylor, him staying on the physically unable to perform list. So that's around 4 games, I believe, that he won't play. And I guess they're just not trading him now. We'll see what happens by the time we get to the deadline. But Jonathan Taylor might be a Colt for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and that definitely, I mean, they wanted a first round pick or at least something comparable for it. And like we both predicted, we didn't think there was going to be somebody out there who's going to give that up, especially with what he was asking for his contract price. So not that shocking to me, but it is going to suck for Richardson to not have him for the first 4 games at least, because, especially for a developmental quarterback and a first round draft pick, it's always good to have a running back like that in the backfield that you can always rely on. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Colts start out this season.
And going off of the physically unable to perform list, bad news for the Bills today. Von Miller will stay on the PUP for the first 4 games, but good news, especially for overall fans of the game. Damar Hamlin makes the roster, so good to see him still being able to perform and actually being back on the field and still being at that elite level where he played. I believe he played pretty well last year until the I don't even know what you want to call it, just very scary turn of events. So glad to see him out there again when
Yeah,
this could be
absolutely.
a
And
lot
I've heard,
darker
I've heard,
story.
I've heard things that he's not playing scared either. He's going right back into it, and he's saying stuff about going back to play football was his decision, and he's going back in with the same mindset he had before. And I think that's the most important thing. You just got to get back up on the horse. If that's what he truly believes is the right decision for him. So I'm just happy to see him pursuing his dreams and believing that he can still do it. And here's just the first step of the way that's showing him that he made the right choice is making an NFL team. So love that for him and love that for the league.
And moving on to quarterbacks real quick before we get into the season overview. Um, Two news on quarterbacks. One that's a little bit might not be as serious as the other one. News coming out from Matthew Stafford's wife that he's not getting along with the rookies and younger players, which, especially with the Rams trying to get themselves younger again after the Super Bowl run, might mean that Matthew Stafford's tenure there might be coming to an end, or they're not going to be at least not going to be able to get back to that same level that they were 2 years ago.
Yeah, man. I don't really know what else to say about that. I mean, he has trouble leading the younger guys in the roster. I mean, I get that if he's just not relating to them in the same sense of trying to, make nice with the teammates and things other than football. But I mean, if he's having trouble getting them to run routes or getting them to block and set up different coverages and things of that nature, like I don't know how he goes about fixing that. I don't know. I think that's up to Sean McVay. So
And I think it was also it's more of I think it's more of a chemistry issue where he said before they would go play cards or something after practice or whatever, where now they're just all on their phones. And now he's like, should I be the father in this partnership where I just take the phones and people are calling him sir in the office or in the um, practice facilities? So it's kind of, especially looking at that younger versus older, where you're having a couple of these quarterbacks who have been in the younger generation starting to turn that past 30. So we'll see, one, just on athleticism, and two, can Matthew Stafford get back to form that he was 2 years ago, or are we actually going to see a decline that we saw last year, or was it just the injury?
Exactly. I think that might help is, a lot of the times to get younger players to respect you and to wake up essentially, you got to show your dominance on the football field. So if he can at least play at a high level in the beginning weeks, then I think the younger players are going to start looking at him and being like, okay, this is a guy we can ball with. This is a guy, that can keep us going. So that'll that'll be something to come, and I guess we'll keep tabs on that throughout. We'll obviously know how it works in the first week, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you're hoping that he doesn't get it week one.
yeah,
So
if they just want to like collapse this year, fine by me. But probably the last news that I found interesting was a bit more of the back burner. Nothing major is going to come out of this for right now, for what we know. Trey Lance being traded to the Cowboys. The Trey Lance experiment with the 49ers, I think we can agree, was a complete failure. He played what, 1.25 games, and I believe it was 3 first round picks they traded for him. So a player that was worth 3 first round picks, and you don't even get like 5 games out of him, and now he's gone for a fourth.
yeah, and as much publicity as people were saying is like, oh, the Vikings might be interested in Trey Lance because they were before, all that type of stuff. I actually wasn't in on him just because he's so unproven. And we have a guy who's unproven in Jaron Hall with our pick this year. And it's just like we need a developmental quarterback regardless. So we might as well just keep the guy we have and not risk giving up more capital. And I think that, with the 49er situation, I've told you this many times, and we've just talked about it. I believe any quarterback can really fit into that system and do well because they have all the weapons in the offensive line to do well on that offense. So I mean, Brock Purdy comes in as a seventh round pick, Mr. Irrelevant, and all of a sudden leads them to the NFC Championship. So I think, that I think they'll be fine quarterback wise, but I mean, giving up all that draft capital is definitely going to be looked at as one of the worst moves, in recent NFL history in terms of trade wise. So
Honestly, I think we can start getting to the point where I think we can actually start saying he might turn out to be a good player in the future. We'll see what he is with the Cowboys. I'll get to the Cowboys in a second. But for the 49ers, I feel like that's one of the biggest draft busts you've had in history. Just
yeah,
what you
it's
thought was
just
going to happen.
the only game he really had though was week one in Chicago in a downpour in which you couldn't really throw the ball too much. So I mean, the guy is still very much a blank slate aside from the injury. So if the injury doesn't bother him anymore, he gets to develop normally. So, it'll be interesting to see if he takes over for somebody in the future or if Dak gets hurt this year, can he step up and do what he needs to do? So,
So going on to the Cowboys real quick, I don't know if this is just smoke going up in the air, but as we know, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's a lot of people coming out and saying that this is Jerry Jones' warning to Dak Prescott that if he doesn't get it together, Trey Lance might be that future where either they don't want to pay Dak again, or say if Dak Prescott has another year like last year, yeah, Jerry Jones has come out and said, "Oh, I believe in Dak." We don't know what's being said behind the scenes where he might just not trust him, and this could be it for Dak Prescott, where if he has another bad year, if he leads the league in interceptions, he tied the league last year and he missed what, 5 games, 4 or 5 games. So you ratio that out, he would have had the most in the league. So can he fix it this year? They got a little bit better this year with his weapons. You lost Zeke Elliott, which I feel like that's addition from subtraction where I just feel like Ezekiel Elliott was just not in his prime anymore. He's declined every single year since he was drafted.
I was
Um,
gonna say, am I one of the only people who thinks that that was a good move, getting rid
yeah,
of
I
Ezekiel
agree
Elliott?
with it. And I feel like now we'll see if Tony Pollard can stay healthy. I know they got a rookie in the draft, which he seems he's been pretty good, but we'll see what happens with Tony Pollard. But again, I feel like this Trey Lance is at least there's some smoke there for this reason. Because I feel like if you didn't feel like you needed a backup, I feel like Cooper Rush was good in the past. I don't remember who they have on the roster right now, but I don't feel like you were really in a worry of having a good backup quarterback, especially if you believe in Dak Prescott that much. Well, if we look at the injury history, Dak has had a few seasons where there's been some sort of he's either knacked or he's out a season or a few games due to an injury. No, he had that freak one against the Giants. I don't hold to him against that freak play. Stuff happens,
Right.
but like I think it was a shoulder injury. I think it was what the hand last year. It's
Yeah.
starting to add up, and I feel like Jerry Jones is like, how much can I trust you to stay on that field for a full 17 games plus postseason?
Right. But I think it's more with the interceptions than it is with that though, because I mean, again, that freak season with the Giants, that's definitely, that's nothing you can hold against. Football happens. That's definitely just something. But I mean, it's more of the few game stretches where he's out for a couple games. That might be something that's compounded with the interceptions. And I think he just can't. I really do see him as as very comparable to Kirk Cousins. He's Kirk Cousins who throws maybe more touchdowns and more interceptions. Like it's kind of funny how people always like to say he's better than Kirk Cousins when I'm just like I actually disagree and the stats would disagree, but he's just been able to lead them to more playoffs. Uh but I mean, I don't really think it's an immediate threat. I think it's to the point where, maybe in 2 seasons, if he's still doing what he's doing with interceptions, then Trey Lance takes over eventually. But again, that depends on if Trey Lance actually can develop if he's not going to be held back by that injury. But time will tell.
Which he did play in the preseason, so I feel like he's back. It just depends on could the Cowboy system be better for him, which I feel like, especially the 49er system, it's okay, I need you to give me a lot of short passes and then hand the ball off. So
Mhm. Very true. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move into some of our predictions and some of the diciness of what could be this episode. We're gonna start making our predictions for the major awards this season. Offensive Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year, Offensive Player, Defensive Player, and the MVP, as well as the Comeback Player of the Year. We're gonna go down the list and just see what we each think about it. I think we're to start it off. I think we had it set like this so that way we could have an agreement to start. Matt and I were talking off camera earlier, and I think both of us agreed that our offensive rookie of the year prediction will be Zay Flowers, receiver
yeah.
taken in first round for the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that that's probably the safest pick that we can make at this point because out of the receivers taken, he's the one who's essentially going to be possibly a 1B on the team because he'll be with Odell. And I don't think if Zay Flowers gets all the opportunities and Lamar Jackson finally has great receivers to throw to, he's definitely going to get a lot of catches, hopefully a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards. So I think that's definitely a safe pick for offensive rookie of the year. Where you look at some of the other receivers taken, they're going to be a wide receiver 2, maybe even a wide receiver 3 on some teams until they prove themselves. So
And I will say, specifically to last year, I feel like we saw a bit of an anomaly where you didn't really have that many good quarterbacks in the draft. You had Malik Willis and uh, guy from Cincinnati, but you didn't really have that guy who could go out and rebuild your franchise. I feel like this year, if you have a quarterback on a team that not only does he start, but can bring the team to maybe the playoffs, we could see him get offensive rookie of the year. But out of at least the first round, I feel like Zay Flowers is probably the best choice. Um, Specifically from my team with the Seahawks. One, JSN is going to miss the first few games. I don't know how long he's going to be out. There's talks that he might be back week 1, week 2. We'll have to see. But I also feel like DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, they're going to take most of the catches from the wide receiver position. We have good running backs and we have good tight ends. So JSN's going to be a sneaky weapon, but I don't feel like he's going to have the stats to really compete for an offensive rookie of the year.
Right, right. So we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to defensive rookie of the year. Who's your pick, Matt?
Depending on how the Texans play this year, I feel like it could be Will Anderson from Alabama. I feel like he could be probably the front runner, depending on how the Texans do now. If the Texans just suck and they double him the entire time, that'll change things. Probably the one I will officially say is my pick is just Jalen Carter. I feel like that the Eagles defense is so good where they're not going to really be focusing on him where you have these other defensive rookies where they're either on bad defenses or just not skilled enough to really take over a game. Devin Witherspoon for the Seahawks could make a case, but I also know he's had an injury issue in training camp, so I'm not sure where he'll be. But Jalen Carter is probably my safe choice for the defensive rookie of the year.
There you go. I don't have any problems with that. Not my pick, but I don't have any problems with that at all. That Eagles defense definitely is they were the number one in sacks and pressures last year. And they had a great rotational guys, and I think he just adds to that. So I love that. And Anderson, I think, is obviously one of the safer picks because he was the first defensive guy taken in the draft. But I mean, on that Texans team, it's pretty much easy to look at your offensive line and say, all right, wherever he is, double team him automatically, put a tight end on the other side, whatever you need to do. And I think teams can effectively neutralize him if they so choose, because other people on the Texans who are going to try and hit home, they don't really have those big name value to them. So for me, I chose to switch it up a little bit, kind of going along the same route of yours with the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm looking at Will McDonald the fourth
Hmm.
on the Jets. Just because the Jets have that great defense, and especially with that secondary, the things that complement each other, a great pass rush can make even the most average cornerbacks look great because the quarterback will be under pressure. Well, the same can be said with great coverage, making pass rushers better. If the quarterback can't find an open receiver and has to scramble or has to keep looking and stay in that pocket longer than he needs to, the pass rushers are eventually going to hit home. And I think with that Jets team, that's probably what we're going to see this year, and that's going to give guys like Will McDonald the fourth the opportunity to hit home with the quarterback. So I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up, getting a lot of sacks this year because of those opportunities with Sauce Gardner and that secondary locking up guys in the backfield. So and that defense as a whole, just like Philadelphia, it's a pretty locked down defense. So it'll be interesting to see what comes forward. But yeah, your opinion on my pick?
I think it's fair. I feel like rookies, it's a coin flip where we don't know who's going to really stand out. We don't know what teams are really going to excel with this rookie, or especially just how the rookie can impact a game. So, especially defensive rookie of the year, depending on how the rookies do. Even last year, I felt like Tariq Woolen wasn't even given a fair shake for defensive rookie of the year. I feel like Sauce Gardner deserved it, but I don't even think Tariq Woolen was in the top or was a finalist for it. So it really just depends on how that rookie stands out. So we'll see what happens. But going on, offensive player of the year, your thoughts on it?
Well, I would really love to finally see Nick Chubb get his accolades with Offensive Player of the Year. He finally doesn't have Kareem Hunt in the backfield to split carries and snaps with him to go catch passes out of the backfield for the touchdowns. So, you know, hopefully the Browns just keep feeding him the ball. And I mean, he's shown year after year that he will continue to get the yards, he'll continue to get the touchdowns, the big play after big play. So now without Hunt in there to kind of steal some touchdowns here and there, you know, I think that he's got a great opportunity to finally have himself the best season of his career, which is a lot to say the least because he's every season he's had an amazing season. So I'm looking at him as one of my guys, and I also think a different pick could be Jamar Chase. I know Justin Jefferson just won it last year for a very different reason because he's had the best season in the first 3 years of a wide receiver's career anybody's ever had. But Jamar Chase, if Joe Burrow is out for any amount of time and Jamar Chase is still able to put up the numbers that he can and still be able to be a safety net for that quarterback who comes in for Joe Burrow, and then maybe when Joe Burrow comes back, Jamar Chase is still lighting it up and maybe leads the league in receiving or something of that nature. I think that could also be something we look at for offensive player of the year. But honestly, I think my pick would be Nick Chubb though. I'd have to look at him and just be like he has the most opportunity this year to get the award, and I'd love to see it go back to a running back because it usually is always a quarterback or a receiver. So I'd love to see it go to a running back this year. What about
But
you?
you're not going to like my pick. So I'm going to go to a quarterback. If this person can stay healthy this year, I feel like they could explode, especially with the weapons they got over the offseason. Um, oh, crud, I'm blanking. Ravens QB.
The Ravens QB?
Yeah,
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson. My bad. I'm sorry. I feel like Lamar
You don't even know
Jackson.
who your pick is.
I was like, yeah, Lamar Jackson, and then blank. Um, so Lamar Jackson, he's already won MVP. We know he can throw the ball. It's always been, does he have the weapons and can he stay healthy? Um, I feel like this year, now that he got a contract, I feel like things have been leveled out for the issues there. So because I feel like Lamar Jackson just makes Baltimore better. I feel like they have a good defense. We'll get to that later. But I feel like with Lamar Jackson, he has the weapons now with Odell Beckham and Zay Flowers. Um, Mark Andrews
Absolutely.
is always a beast. I feel like they have a decent offensive line. Um, so not only him being a threat on the ground, but I also feel like now he can be a threat for the air where defenses are going to really have an issue with him. And I don't feel like I don't have him as my MVP, but I feel like he could still be a really big offensive threat this year to win the Ravens some games. And if he stays healthy, I'll have him as my pick for offensive player of the year.
There you go. And I don't see why you thought I'd have any problem with that because that's another running back for offensive player of the year.
Uh,
Just kidding.
Tyler,
Jokes
that's how
aside,
you
I
get
mean,
hated on.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Going back to those days, I mean, he's proven us all wrong time and time again. It's just it's amazing when I see the Lamar Jacksons, the Jalen Hurts, and the Justin Fields of the game, the mobile quarterbacks that the Vikings always have trouble against, and that the league is now having trouble against. And so, he was kind of the first one to really break the mold in today's NFL to really make it work because obviously Michael Vick did it years and years ago. Um, but
I'll say debatable, but we can have that argument another day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I mean, I don't hate the pick at all because, obviously he's won MVP before and like I said, my offensive rookie of the year pick was Zay Flowers, so I mean, that's got to mean Lamar Jackson's doing well if Zay Flowers does well. So I think those would go hand in hand and I think that's a great pick. And I'd love to see, him finally having that opportunity with those receivers and just to see what happens because I mean, the fact that he put up the numbers he did, each and every year even when he was injured without really a true wide receiver to throw to, besides Mark Andrews, who's a tight end. It's just great to see what he'll be able to do this year. So, nope, not a problem with that pick at all. And that was, to be clear, a joke about the running back, just harkening back to his rookie season. Not bad for a running back.
Not bad
So,
for a wide receiver. But going on to defensive player of the year, I feel like this one's always a toss up. We agreed earlier that it just depends on who's healthy and who's able to stay healthy for a majority of the year. Who do you believe will be the one to pull out with the defensive player of the year?
yeah, I mean, obviously, I think everybody in the NFL would love to see TJ Watt get defensive player of the year. Obviously, like you said, it depends on if he stays healthy or not. If we're playing in a world where everybody stays healthy, that would be my pick without any question. However, we do live in a world where injuries do plague the NFL, and he will probably miss time as, the years have shown. So to pick a guy who usually does not miss time, I will go with Hassan Reddick on the Eagles. Not only was he one of the best pass rushers last year and especially on that team who, as I said, did get the most sacks and pressures last year. That team was a beast up front. As much as they do rotate, he hit home pretty much every time he tried, and was on the field. So I really see him in year two of that defense because he came over from the Panthers last year. So he gets another year under the Eagles defense. And I think working with those guys, being able to find different coverages and mismatches, especially with the other guys they have to worry about, or sorry, every other team facing them has to worry about. I think he could definitely see a lot of opportunities to get to enough statistics and accolades and game just disruption overall to be able to get defensive player of the year. How about you?
Okay. Um, Honestly, I just changed my pick mid while you were talking. Honestly, TJ Watt was my original pick. I feel like he could probably get a healthy season out from what we saw last year. He could have probably won it easily. We saw him in the Bengals game week one, just destroying the Bengals. Now the Bengals have a horrible offensive line. Already seeing that issue popping up again this year. But I'm actually moving towards the NFC with now you could say Aaron Donald, the NFC West. I just feel like Aaron Donald, another year older, the defense has gotten worse. You lost Jalen Ramsey in the background or the cornerbacks, so your secondary has just gotten worse. Um, I'm actually going to go to the NFC least with Micah Parsons. I feel like another year in the
Yeah,
system, another year of him growing. We saw him be a really good player last year. He kind of leveled out in the middle of the season, but I feel like another year of development. We didn't really see any injury issues. I know he had one or two nagging injuries during the year, but nothing to really make him miss enough time where that could be an issue. I feel like Cowboys had plenty of rest since that 49ers game. So I feel like him coming into another year, I feel like he could be a key cog in that defense. I feel like that secondary is still good where he gives them enough time up front to get to the quarterback. I know they like to play him in different positions. So I feel like he could be a defensive player of the year this year.
for sure. I love that pick, and I mean, if it weren't for, me wanting to kind of shoot in the dark, so to speak, with the Hassan Reddick pick, somebody who's not really talked about as much. I want to give somebody his flowers, so to speak. But you know, two things about that. Props to you for remembering his name. I mean, guys like Lamar Jackson, I guess for you are easily forgettable. Um, I mean, especially if they play multiple positions. So, I mean, like you said, Micah Parsons, definitely a game wrecker. We don't have to talk about last year Cowboys Vikings. We don't have to talk about that. That was basically Vikings versus Micah Parsons, and the Vikings lost. So, yeah, definitely not bringing up PTSD for me. But on the other hand, the other thing I wanted to say is with all the crap you just talked about Aaron Donald, so to speak, in 2 weeks, when he proceeds to get 7 sacks and a forced fumble on Geno Smith, I will be coming back on here and laughing at you.
Okay.
So just wanted to put that out there. And with that, I'm gonna lead into the MVP. No, it's not Aaron Donald. I'm just kidding. But with MVP, I mean, I have to pick Patrick Mahomes. There until somebody dethrones him or if he gets hurt, I don't think anybody in the National Football League can pick anybody other than Patrick Mahomes as the MVP. What he does year in and year out, the numbers he puts up, the amazing plays he makes, the accolades he makes, as far as he makes it in the playoffs, nobody else is doing that around the league. I mean, you could make it. I mean, I think my non-Mahomes pick would be Jalen Hurts, just because if he does what he did last year again, I think that would solidify people to pick him as the MVP this year. But like I said, you have to dethrone Patrick Mahomes from that spot because I feel like it's his award to lose in today's NFL. So those are just my thoughts.
Well, Tyler, I have the perfect QB to do it.
Is it Joe Burr?
No, 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 no. Starting his first year as the starting QB for the Green Bay Packers, I think Jordan Love will win the MVP this year, Tyler.
How do you leave a call? Let's see. Go
Okay,
over here.
all seriousness. Yeah, I feel like if Joe Burrow was starting the season healthy, which we've heard back and forth, I don't think he's going to play week one. Unless he comes back and lights the world on fire, it probably is Patrick Mahomes' award to win. Um, Now, if we've seen in the past where Patrick Mahomes during the regular season kind of holds back a bit, if you can say that. They don't really go for the trick plays and everything that they do in the playoffs. I feel like Patrick Mahomes steps up another level. For NBA fans out there, I feel like it's playoff Jimmy Butler. I will get shot for that. Um, Not saying they're equivalent players. Not
For
saying that,
people
but
aiming their guns at him, I don't watch anything about the NBA, so I have no idea who that is. So
just the thing where I feel like Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs step up another level once it gets to the playoffs. I don't feel like they put as much focus on the regular season, where if they did, I feel like they would be a very unstoppable team. But last year we saw the Colts beat them. Um,
yeah.
I could see a scenario where Joe Burrow comes back in and lights the world on fire, especially if he's out for 2 or 3 weeks and they go 0-3, where they need him to be at his very best. And another year with Jamar Chase, I feel like we could see that offensive line start to take steps forward. We'll have to see. But it'll just depend on how this season goes. I feel like MVP, we always say at the beginning of the year, it'll be this player, this other player, and then things just go sideways.
And that really is the Achilles heel of the Bengals is definitely that offensive line. I mean, same with the Vikings, but both offenses are really potent, but both of the weaknesses are easily exploited with a good pass rush or a blitz. So, uh, definitely agree with you there. And I think that's a solid pick. Nothing on it. I will say, I was about to leave the call with Jordan Love, even though that was a joke. Uh, it's been 30 years. There's 30 years straight that the NFC North has had to deal with MVP caliber quarterbacks on the Packers, and that's only two guys, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. So as long as Jordan Love is just good or less, I hope he's bad. I hope everyone on the Packers sucks this year. I hope nobody. I don't hope for any injuries. I never put any of that bad voodoo out there. I don't want any of that. But I just hope everyone on the Packers plays poorly because that just helps the Vikings and it makes me happy because that's my number one rival. I'm sure you feel the same way about the Rams. So, uh, but I just, as long as it's not an MVP caliber quarterback, I want to see how the Packers do without an MVP caliber quarterback. It just would make me feel a lot better to know that they have a weakness or something of that nature. So, but with that being said, let's move on to our last award, so to speak, for individuals. With comeback player of the year, we're gonna do Walter Payton. We'll talk about that one probably mid-season when we actually know what everybody's causes are. Because obviously that is another major individual award, but we can't do that yet because we don't know who the nominees are as well as what their projects are and everything. So, with that being said, Matt, who do you think could be the comeback player of the year this year?
So I do not dare try to pronounce his last name, but I feel like Tua, down in Miami, I feel like things got scary down there last year with the concussions, where there was a point of could we see him just have to end his career then just because the amount of concussions he was having back to back to back. I feel like the NFL's safety precautions kind of failed him there. He says he's learned how to fall in the off season. We'll see week one
Hmm.
what that means. But I feel like if he can keep away from the concussions, play a full healthy year, and basically get Miami back to what they were looking like, which was a perennial playoff contender, if not Super Bowl contender. We saw them playing Buffalo, who some people thought was the Super Bowl pick for last year, really tough. We saw them playing other teams really tough. And it really just got to the end where when Tua was just put out for the rest of the season, they couldn't really get anything going with their backups. So if Tua can stay healthy for the full season and protect himself, they have some great wide receivers. Tyler, if
Oh
it
yeah,
wasn't
that
for other teams, I could probably say they are at least the fastest duo in the league when it comes to wide receivers. And
oh,
speed kills
they have the
everybody.
fastest running back too.
Yeah.
Raheem Mostert's run the fastest, so I believe of all running backs. So I think in
There's a
terms
lot
of
of speed on
I
that
think it's in terms
offense.
of work
And
times. So exactly.
I just feel like, as we know, speed kills. It's basically how do you want to get poisoned by 1,000 paper cuts?
Mhm.
Who do you want beating you down the sideline for an 80-yard touchdown? Because you're not going to have two corners that are number one corners on a roster. So it's do you want Jalen Waddle going for 200 today, or are you going to have Tyreek Hill down the sideline every single play going for a 75-yard touchdown?
Right. And see, that's why this is one other reason why I think that, we were both looking at Miami for a possible Jonathan Taylor destination. And obviously they were looking at Dalvin Cook as well. I just don't think they were willing to give up as much for either of those backs that either team wanted, or in Dalvin Cook's case, the contract amount that he wanted. Uh, but when you look at that offense, you would wonder why you wouldn't give more for one of those guys at a certain extent, because if you get a guy that you have to commit more guys to the box to, and you're able to leave Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle with one-on-one, that's just it's not going to go well for your team at all. So to be able to have to make defenses figure out, okay, how do we pick our poison? Who do we take the chance on? Raheem Mostert's still a fast guy, so I mean, I think he still has he still makes people overthink it, and will commit people to the box, but definitely not as much as Dalvin Cook or Jonathan Taylor would. But we'll see how they do. I love the Tua comeback story. I think that would make a great pick, and I think that you and I would both agree, as we mentioned earlier in the show, Damar Hamlin, if he comes in and has a great year, I think he would be the obvious winner of the comeback player of the year.
Hmm.
But that aside, who I think could come back and statistically, have a much better year. I'm between two guys, one of which you already picked for a different award. I'm looking at Lamar Jackson,
Hmm.
coming back from injury, having those receivers and being considered the comeback player of the year, uh, because he came back from injury and because he finally has the receiving core and everything of that nature. uh, Maybe comes back and takes the North again. That if the Bengals are without Joe Burrow, or he comes back and gets hurt, they rush him out there too quickly. Like we said last show, that division then becomes up for grabs.
Yeah,
So between all three, theoretically, but I'm also looking at Calvin Ridley over there in Jacksonville.
that's fair.
Uh, he's coming back from a year off suspension for gambling, and they were already talking about how good the Jaguars were. I mean, obviously they went to the playoffs and they won a playoff game.
Kept it very
Sure
close
they
with the
have,
Chiefs.
yeah, and now they're getting a wide receiver one back, as well as to add to that offense. So I mean, I think that when he comes in, he might be, not only is he going to help the Jaguars receivers get better by essentially mentoring them, I think he himself could have a phenomenal year under Trevor Lawrence. So
Just
I
gives
think a
them
lot of
fresh
people forget.
legs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of people forget how good he was and still is. So I think he definitely has a shot to be the comeback player of the year as well. But I think as far as like who we would hope to just for the good seeing good in the world, I think it's definitely Damar Hamlin or Tua. I think we're
Yeah,
right on the
definitely.
nose there. So because both of those stories would be amazing for them to win those awards. So, but maybe the best case scenario is Tua wins Offensive Player of the Year and Damar Hamlin wins Comeback Player of the Year. I think that's probably the most likely scenario, but
My only worry
only
with
time will
Damar
tell there.
Hamlin, sorry, my only worry with Damar Hamlin is the only reason why he was actually playing once we got to the Bengals game was the injury to Micah Hyde, I believe, where he was out for the rest of the season. So, and especially, I don't know if it was just Damar Hamlin being lower on the depth chart or they had reservations on whether he's fully back, which just being able to be back on a football field and making the plays he did, I think it was against the Colts, was amazing to see. A great story, but I'm just worried that with the depth chart where he might not be up there. Now he played, as I said earlier, I feel like he played really well. So we'll have to see on that one, but I have no problem with your either of your picks.
There you go. And again, yeah, that was just my, love to see good in the world pick. Obviously, I'm between Lamar Jackson and Calvin Ridley for my actual picks for the comeback player of the year, but I would just love to see DeMar Hamlin get on the field and be able to contribute and win that award. That I think that would be a good heartwarming story, so to speak. I was looking for the word. I couldn't think of it. You forget Lamar Jackson's name, I forget the word heartwarming. So definitely a lot of
53 men on a
forgetfulness.
roster, and there's 32 teams.
That's true. That's true. I'll cut you some slack a little bit. All right. Well, now we're going to quickly preview each division. We don't want to be here for too long, but we're kind of just going to go through, look at the AFC first, and then we're going to end with each of our divisions respectively. So let's just start off with the AFC East. We got some interesting things going on here. I mean, obviously, Buffalo won it last year. Dolphins were close, but now the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. Tua could come back and cause a lot of damage. So who are you looking at, Matt, for the AFC East?
We'll get more into the standings next week, but I feel like we can both agree the Patriots are just not in the running for any of this.
Yeah,
To a few
not to
people's,
pull media against the Geno Smith, but I've written the Patriots off.
yeah. Um, I feel like the Bills just haven't improved the roster enough. I feel like they kind of just stayed stagnant over the offseason. Naheem Hines got injured in a freak accident during the offseason before they got to camp. Um, I just Von Miller staying on the PUP, so that's already 4 games that he won't play. What type of effect will he have once he finally comes back from injury? And as we've said, we don't want injuries on anybody, but it just comes to a point where it becomes a trend on health. Can Von Miller stay healthy? He's an older player now, so I hope he can come back and be as great on that defense as he was last year until he got injured. Um, so to cut long story short, I feel like I'm gonna have to go with the Dolphins. I feel like there's still a lot of weaknesses on the Jets. We've already seen Aaron Rodgers have some
Really
frustrations with the
interesting.
wide receivers. Um, Another problem, the Jets wide receivers, I feel like it's an okay core. They're putting a lot on Garrett Wilson, especially to carry that core to be as good as people think it is. I feel like Dalvin Cook could be at a good addition, but I feel like they got Aaron Rodgers and then just stayed away from what the roster needs, which is some offensive line help. I It's been an issue in the past, and I feel like it could be an issue again, especially with the defensive lines in the AFC. So I'm going to go with Miami.
Yeah, I'm gonna controverse or I guess stir some controversy right off the gate, and I'm actually gonna go with the Jets. I agree with what you said about the Bills. I mean, I as far as how much I like each of these teams, I'd want to go with the Bills or the Dolphins to win just because I don't have a problem with them. Like personally, I don't have any personal vendettas against them, or anything like that. But I think the Jets, you know, they got Rodgers. They got people on Rodgers' wish list. He's got the media coverage, and we all know that. Sure, Robert Saleh didn't want to be on Hard Knocks, but Aaron Rodgers definitely did. He wanted to be on Hard Knocks, and I think that with that attention, Aaron Rodgers is actually one of those guys who definitely thrives under pressure. He's gonna be the opposite of Kirk Cousins. He's gonna win the Monday night games. He's gonna win all the primetime games. Well,
Debatable.
most of them, most of them anyway. He's gonna at least perform well in them.
Their season has either ended in playoffs or playoff like games at Lambeau Field. I think what 3 to 4 years in
We're
a row
talking
now.
about regular season. We're talking about regular season here. All right, Matt. Just cool your jets a little bit. Ha. No pun intended, but that was kind of funny. Um, cool your jets a little bit on that. We're just talking about who's going to win the division. Regular
I'm just
season
saying he
football.
can't handle the lights. That's just my opinion.
Exactly, but I think that's playoffs. You look at Aaron Rodgers through his career statistically in the regular season, he handles primetime games very well. Playoffs, completely different story. I agree with you there. It has been hilarious watching them lose every year in the NFC Championship game. And then finally they decide to lose in the divisional so they don't have to keep losing in the championship game. It was amazing. I loved watching that.
Well, last year it
So
was week 17, so
oh yeah, and see that was even better. So I'd rather them just not make the playoffs ever. So, but my hatred of the Packers aside, um, I do believe that getting his wish list there, bringing Dalvin Cook in was definitely a good acquisition. They have a receiving back in him, which I think, opens up a lot of play action passes there, a lot of bootlegs, a lot of screens. They get Brees Hall back. Obviously Garrett Wilson will be carrying a lot of the load, but I think, a lot of people forget that Alan Lazard isn't just a blocking wide receiver. He is actually a good wide receiver. Like he's a good guy. And I think that he'll often get lost in the wash because people will think he's blocking it first, and then he'll kind of break out like a tight end does, and then use some of that sneaky speed to probably chew up some yards. So I really do see that offense really clicking. And then the overall roster. Granted, we might be having a different conversation slightly had Jalen Ramsey not gotten hurt in the offseason for the Dolphins. But I think when you look at the overall team on all three sides of the ball, I think that the Jets have the best roster. And I just don't think that you can count out regular season Aaron Rodgers at any point other than last year, which again, amazing, but Packers team that kind of questionable. They should have just run the ball a lot. They didn't, which I mean, again, not going to get into it, but I think the Jets are the clear cut. I mean, not clear, but I think they're my pick definitely to win the East. I'll just leave it at that. They have the best roster.
before we go on to the
There's
next division, speaking of the Broncos with the AFC West, I just feel like it's going to be another thing where we see a quarterback go to another team, specifically an NFC quarterback going to an AFC team where it's a loaded conference, especially this division. It's a loaded division where I feel like there's going to be some growing pains and they're just not going to be able to get to the point where they wanted to. Robert Saleh is a lot more of a defensive minded coach rather than LaFleur, where he's more of an offensive minded, and we've seen
Mm.
Aaron Rodgers go from a okay quarterback before he got there with Mike McCarthy to winning MVP 2 years in a row, where then they lost Devontae Adams. I feel that has some weight to it, but we'll see what happens. So going on to the AFC West, I think we can agree Chiefs.
Yeah, we can easily cut out the Chiefs. They have no chance. Terrible team. Definitely nobody worthwhile mentioning on that team. I mean, they have no star quality players
Horrible
whatsoever.
coach.
I don't even know anybody's name on the Chiefs. I mean, who can even tell? I mean, when's the last time they even made a playoff game? Yeah. No, yeah. Again, you have to dethrone Patrick Mahomes in order to get an MVP. You have to dethrone Patrick Mahomes in order to say anybody's better than the Kansas City Chiefs. No matter who he's throwing the ball to, he could have third string receivers on the field and he could still win the game against a great team. So I let's just move on. AFC North. Uh this one's interesting. Uh oh, sorry. Before I just move it on without your consideration. Were we good just leaving it at the Chiefs?
Yeah, I feel like if the Raiders had somebody other than Jimmy Garoppolo, the Raiders might be there. Chargers, we just haven't seen any consistency in their play. Um, Justin Herbert, mid 500 quarterback for his whole career. Not saying he's a mid 500 quarterback, but record says one thing. I think he's 25-24 in his career. Not great. And then I just don't know how the Russell Wilson, or not Sean McVay, Jesus, how that experiment in Denver is going to go.
Yeah, there's too many question marks, and it's funny how they kind of all overlap. Las Vegas, you have a question mark at quarterback. Chargers, you have a question mark at head coach. And then Denver Broncos, you have a question
He's
mark kind
both.
of just overall the play calling and everything. So it's just very odd. If I had to pick somebody other than the Chiefs, I'd probably say the Chargers have the best shot, but that just requires Staley to not be as overzealous in his, going forward on fourth down and all those the bad
Also requires the
decisions.
whole roster
Yeah.
not to be injured by week 5.
That is also true. Yeah, and they have to lose their choking. Yeah, so never mind. It's just going to be the Chiefs. Who
Yeah,
cares?
but we can move on.
Um, yeah. Okay. Cool. AFC North. Okay.
This one
Let's
gets
see.
tricky.
It is very tricky. This is one of those ones where you're like, you want to say it's the Bengals, but
There's a lot of,
all
I still think there's a lot of issues with the Bengals. I feel
hear me out here. The Bengals, out of all four of these teams, the Bengals are the ones that got the least better over the offseason. Like the other three teams improved a lot more than the Bengals did, is what I'm trying to say there.
you can make an argument the Bengals got worse other than filling in some pieces at the offensive line.
Right. I mean, they ship away Hayden Hurst, so they lose their number one tight end. I mean, obviously they still have their amazing wide receiver core. They still have Joe Burrow. They still have Joe Mixon. Like they still have that. But I mean, their offensive line, their defense, and now their tight ends very questionable because I think their starting tight end is Irv Smith, and I can tell you as a Vikings fan, he's not good. And he's also very injury plagued as well. So, uh, so I feel like he lost his check down option. So that's definitely interesting. And I feel like like I said, the Steelers and the Ravens got monumentally better in the offseason. The Browns got a little bit better in the offseason. So I'm just like, I'm looking at them and they're all sticking out to me. I'd have to say we know Mike Tomlin has never had a losing season. I think that continues, but I don't think they win the division. I think the Ravens. I think the Ravens. I think the Ravens win the division.
For me, I'm already going to like knock out the Browns. I just don't think they have a talented enough roster in that division or the AFC to even make the playoffs. Um, I really need to see Deshaun Watson get back to when he was good with the Texans before. We'll leave that whole topic out, but I feel like we
We don't want to get
saw,
demonetized just yet. We'll have a
yeah,
whole
yeah.
video about that coming up later.
Um, but I feel like they've lost some pieces as well. They may have gained some, but I don't feel like they got a huge gain. Um, Steelers, I just need to see more from Kenny Pickett before we can start talking about them as threats in the AFC. So, depending on the amount of games Joe Burrow misses and how long it takes him to get back into form, we saw kind of the same thing last year where they rushed him back and took him a few weeks to get back into check, and that almost cost him. If um, I honestly feel like if Lamar Jackson didn't go down middle of the season, I feel like the Ravens could have won it last year. So I'll say Ravens win it this year, like you did.
Yeah, and again, I think we both believe in the Bengals, and as we should. They've made it to the Super Bowl and the AFC Championship game, and they obviously won it both times. But I think it's just a matter of the Ravens are just they're coming for the top spot, and I think that with Joe Burrow's we don't know how bad his injury actually is and what they're going to plan to do about him. And there's too many question marks. So that's going to be interesting to see. All right, the AFC South, arguably one of the best divisions in football. This is the one where everybody's going to have a winning record, right?
Yeah, if all the other teams either got just deleted from existence or it was a 14 league.
They can just show up, hours before the game's supposed to be played and score all the touchdowns and then just say we won the game. I mean,
Or Roger Goodell
then they could
says they
win.
have a 35-point head start before you start the game. Yeah, well,
Yeah, but then the Colts still lose because then the Vikings beat them somehow, even though the Vikings don't play them this year.
I said 35, not 33.
Oh, yeah. Well, still, hey, new record, you know. Uh Always room to break that.
Well,
But
it's also
no,
Matt Ryan isn't there anymore, so
yeah, that's true, and that's gonna help them. Uh but let's see. I'm gonna, I mean, obviously it's between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. I think we can both agree on that. Um I think the most obvious pick is to pick the Jaguars, which is why I'm gonna pick the Titans, because the NFL always has at least one division where somebody who you don't expect to win is going to win the division. I think that's the AFC South. D Hop's coming in. They're not going to be able to just stack 8 men in the box and stop Derrick Henry, and that's all you have to do now. D Hop demands some attention. I think that opens up things for Derrick Henry. D
okay, I
Hop
have a
can teach a
question for
lot of
you
things to
though.
the receivers.
Who's throwing him the ball?
That's my only question mark. So again, I'm not confident in it. I said before the pick, Jacksonville Jaguars are the obvious pick, which is why I'm going to go with the Titans. I'm picking this purely based off of there's always one division at least where the team that you don't expect to win doesn't, or the team that you expect to win does not win the division. And so I'm going to actually pick the Titans because of that. Again, I think the Jaguars are the clear better team, but Mike Vrabel, I think, is one of the best coaches in the league, just in terms of being a head coach. They still have a sneaky good defense if they can stay healthy. That's definitely the main thing, as is with most of these teams. And again, like I said, the offense is now going to look a lot different because Derrick Henry is not going to have to face as many guys as he had before, because you can't just put one or even two guys on D Hop and say he's gonna be glued the whole game. D Hop's going to break out, so you're going to have to figure out different packages to keep him contained. And who knows, some of the other Titans players could break out as well. So they could run a lot of 21 or 22 personnel and run a few backs in the backfield, help them get even more yards, and still have D Hop on the outside. So I think that's the sneaky pick for it. So I'll understand with your rebuttal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but I'm gonna stick to my guns. I have a feeling the Tennessee Titans are gonna come out and surprise some people.
Well, I know a team in the division that actually has a good quarterback who stayed healthy last year and isn't trying to get shipped out for every other mid second, third, fourth, fifth round pick that they get in there that fails miserably. And they're getting your pick for comeback player of the year. I feel like we saw Trevor Lawrence starting to actually ascend with actually having a good coach that actually cares about his development and isn't staying at a bar in Ohio doing random stuff. I just feel like we're going to see the Jacksonville Jaguars go up another step. They're getting a great receiver for absolutely nothing. They didn't give up anything for him over the offseason where we saw last year where teams are having to give up stuff for good players. You're going to the season. Oh, yeah, you just get Calvin Ridley fresh after having, what, 1 to 2 years out of the league. He's coming in fresh. I feel like they're just getting better. The young players are developing. So I just feel like they go up another step and actually just take over division. The Texans and the Colts, I think we can both agree they're still in they suck territory. Trying to figure out, are these the guys that we picked, the ones that are going to help develop this franchise where 3 to 4 to 5 years from now we're going to be good. So
Yeah. I mean, honestly, we can't just pick the same team for all of the divisions. So I just had to be different there because I don't want this to be such a boring thing where we're basically just like, okay, Chiefs next, Jaguars next, Ravens next. Doesn't make any sense. But I mean, again, I just have a feeling. I don't know why. I mean, I really do like the Titans as a team. I just they're cool, and who doesn't like Derrick Henry? I mean, that's just he's just an awesome dude. So. I mean, I just have a feeling that that's the team that's going to jump out. Maybe it's the divisional games because that division for some reason, no matter how bad some of these teams are, looking at the Texans and the Colts specifically, no matter how bad they are, sometimes they can always steal a win from the
Yeah.
clear-cut winner of the division. So maybe that happens with the Jaguars this year and the Titans jump ahead in the division, win the division. Again, I think both of those teams could easily make the playoffs. It's just a matter of who wins the division and who's the 7th seed.
Well,
So
I'll have to disagree with you there. I feel like it's same thing as we saw last year. One team will be in the playoffs just because one team has to win the division.
yeah, that
I just
actually, and
don't
and yeah,
see
that is.
it's going to be an either or. I don't think it's going to be both, just who wins the division. I think they're, especially with what you said with the division's records, it always seems like each team either takes or splits the series between the other three teams, or they'll sweep one team but then lose both games against the other team. So
Yeah,
I
I'm gonna
think it
rescind that, and
all
I will
kind
I
of
will say
just
it is neither or,
medals
but
each
I
other.
think that's when the Titans do jump. So yeah, because I totally forgot. Just going back up and looking at the East and the North, like we're looking at least two teams each of there. So I mean,
A lot of
and then
competition in that conference.
exactly. So I mean, because you can make an argument that the Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins all make it. You can make the argument that the Bengals, the Ravens, and the Steelers all make it. So I mean, yeah, yeah, that's what I'm like. I mean, you can make several arguments here. So I will say it is neither or, but maybe that's the Tennessee Titans jump them purely based off a divisional record. So maybe they both finish 9-8, or they both finish 10-7, and Tennessee Titans won one more divisional game than them. So, but we'll see. I have to be different. Otherwise, this show has no purpose of being a show
Well,
for
moving
this week.
on to the loaded NFC conference with the best quarterbacks in the league, with the best talent or the most talented rosters, and just starting off with the NFC East with the most talented QBs in the league. I think we both agree the
And
Washington
that
Commanders are
Jalen
the
Hurts guy
clear.
who's just weird.
I feel like the Washington Commanders clear cut, top notch, the best stadium in the league as well.
Can we just talk about why they didn't go with the Red Wolves? That would have just been a great name. Like there were so many other names that they could have gone with, and they chose Commanders. I don't understand. Anyway,
Well, now there's calls to take them back to the old name, so
I
that
would love that, and my grandfather would love that because I'm thankful that, and I'm sure he is too, that he passed before the name change. Um, because he definitely he grew up with that team, and he lived in Maryland pretty much for most of his life. So, but anyway, yeah, looking at that team, it's kind of like the Chiefs of the NFC. You got to dethrone the Eagles as well, in my opinion. I mean, I'm sure pretty much every other show talks about it. The two teams to beat in the NFC are the Eagles and the Niners. And until teams do that, you're really not getting anywhere. So I think the clear cut winners are the Philadelphia Eagles. I do believe the Dallas Cowboys will make the playoffs again. I don't think they're going to win the division, but they will definitely make the playoffs again. The Giants may even slip in as well, especially because they've added a lot of pieces as well. So I could definitely see three teams from this division making it. But are we in agreement that the Eagles are the favorite until proven otherwise?
Tyler, I'm a numbers guy. I like to go with trends. And there's been an 18-year drought for NFC East champions to win the East consecutively. Um, I'm going to go with the Cowboys just to go with trends. I don't think the Giants will win it again. Um, I feel like the Eagles, they had an easy schedule last year where we saw once they finally faced the Chiefs, they were just outmatched once we got to the second half. Felt like they played a great first half, except for the fumble return for the touchdown. I feel like that probably flipped the game over. But I just feel like the trend, the Eagles are going to have a tougher schedule this year. We'll see what happens, but I feel like the Cowboys' defense, they got better on offense. We'll see what happens to Tony Pollard. We'll see if Dak Prescott goes back to throwing 15 to 20 picks for the whole year, where he goes 2 picks a game. We'll see what happens, but I'm going to have to follow trends and go with the Cowboys.
I'm glad you brought up trends because going back to the Commanders, they just broke the Ravens' 24 game record setting streak of preseason victories the other week. And I I
The
have a
greatest
weird
trend
feeling.
in sports.
I have a weird feeling that because they beat the Steelers when they were undefeated. They beat the Eagles last year when they were undefeated. They're the kings of defeating the undefeated or the streakiest teams. I have a feeling the Commanders are going to take away the Cowboys' chance to win the division. It's going to happen. And the streak is going to end because the Commanders are going to say, no, they're going to beat the Cowboys, which allows the Eagles to steal the division
No, but
in
they
one of
can
like
only
the
do
late.
one trend per year, Tyler. Come on.
I,
Only
I don't
one
know,
record
man.
per year.
Don't doubt the Commanders, man, and their ability to ruin trends. Don't do that. You know what happens when you do that.
Yeah, because Sam Howell's going to turn into the next
Well, I,
Tom Brady.
hey, they could win 5 games. They could win 9 or 10. I don't
They
know
could
what their
also win
record's going to
two
be.
games.
Yeah, I have no idea what their record will be. I think they'll win more than 2 games for sure. But that aside, I don't know what their record will be, but I do not have any doubt that they will win a game that they are not supposed to win on paper. And I have a feeling that it'll be against the Cowboys. Also because they usually just split with the Cowboys anyway. But anywho. Moving on to the NFC South, arguably the best division in football. Just the best football that's being played overall is seen in the South. We definitely don't have any accusations of beating people. We definitely don't have last chance quarterbacks. Uh, you know, yeah.
You don't have horrendous offensive line play.
Yeah, or just questionable defenses plagued by injuries. So, uh,
Okay, which one are you
yeah.
saying that about?
Okay, so honestly, for the NFC South, I was debating just getting 2 coins and flipping them both, and then flipping another coin to decide who wins, because I feel like that would be honestly not a bad way to pick the winner because this division is so up for grabs. Um, I gotta say, for the past few weeks, I've been between the Falcons and the Saints, though, to win the division. And I think I'm going to go with the Falcons. I think they're finally going to get over that hump. I think their defense is finally going to stay healthy. Ritter in year 2 is hopefully going to be good, but not against the Vikings. Uh, and I'm just, I'm looking at that team. I think they have the most complete roster. They've got a good coach. You know, Carolina Panthers. I mean, Carolina Panthers are close too, but again, rookie quarterback. I usually don't tend to go with a quarterback in his first year unless it's a Joe Burrow type talent. Um, so I'm gonna steer clear of them just for that reason. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, too many question marks, obviously with Baker Mayfield. Can the defense stay healthy?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if they're gonna win either. And I think that just Falcons versus Saints is what I'm looking at. And I think that the Falcons just have the pieces in place to make that step. The question is, will they? So
We've had this conversation before, and at first believe the Falcons just have a lot more offensive weapons, and I feel like that defense is starting to get built up. But I'm going to have to disagree, actually. I've started switching over to the Saints just by looking at consistent QB play. Um, yeah, Derek Carr, before the season began last year, was argued as the fourth best QB in the AFC West. turned out that was Russell Wilson. We'll get to that conversation another day. But I just feel like Derek Carr's the most proven QB in that division. And I feel like the Saints over the past how many years since Drew Brees retired has just been plagued by inconsistent QB play. You had the Taysom Hill experiment that one game he would be rushing for 150 yards and throwing for 300 yards. There'd be games that he would be throwing 5 picks and getting -10 rushing yards. It was up and down. You had the Jameis Winston experiment where he played okay. I feel like he was better than what he was in Tampa with the 30 for 30, which best meme of all time for him. But he was plagued by injuries, and then the Andy Dalton experiment that didn't really go anywhere. So I feel like finally getting a consistent QB. I feel like that roster is also a bit more experienced. So I'm gonna have to go with the Saints for that one.
So you're gonna dog on the Jets and Rodgers for having to switch conferences and use that as your reason, but you're not gonna dog on Derek Carr for switching conferences and think he's gonna and
Well,
you're gonna call that consistent QB play when it's his first time on the Saints.
well, hold on. The NFC is a lot worse than the AFC.
This is true.
The NFC South is a lot easier than the AFC East
That's also true.
because you do not have a Tampa Bay.
Actually, I don't know if I'd say it's easier. Because when I look at the AFC East, we all said we could easily eliminate the Patriots, and then the other three teams fought, kind of battle it out. But the Bills didn't improve their roster, so it was really between the Jets and the Dolphins. Here, you can't really write anybody off instantaneously. Then when you start looking deeper, you maybe write off the Buccaneers. Other than that, it's up for grabs.
If Baker Mayfield beats you, then you have no hope to win anything. Yes, they have good wide
So
receivers, but when we were hearing in training camp in the preseason that the Kyle Trask versus Baker Mayfield position battle, where when Baker Mayfield was originally signed, everyone agreed that Baker Mayfield would be the one to get to training camps in preseason to hear it has still not been decided. I just don't see that happening. The roster is falling out. Lost Tom Brady. I feel like he covered up a lot of holes, especially on the offense. Panthers' offensive line is just horrid. We've seen that in the preseason when
yeah. Oh yeah. No
their
question.
their number one offensive line was getting beaten by twos, threes, and fours.
Hmm.
Um, Falcons, we've heard Desmond Ritter having issues during camp. He's still unproven. I feel like Kyle Pitts could be the number one tight end in the NFL, but he's the most underused. If fantasy owners could get a stranglehold on that offensive coordinator and head coach for the amount of times they trusted Kyle Pitts in fantasy, they would be 6 feet under right now, Tyler. Because it's always like, oh, Kyle Pitts is a sure bet. Yeah, he might get 3 touchdowns during the year because he's so underused. I feel like he's a great player. I feel like
Yeah, we're not
offense
talking
could be
about
great.
fantasy.
Well, I'm not saying fantasy relates to actual wins, but I feel like it still relates to how utilizes he. And if he's underutilized, you're not going to win. But
I see it, and again, I was tempted to flip a coin off screen and just flip for the winner. I'm still tempted to go do it now because I have a coin. So, but because of that, you know what? We're not onto this topic yet, but I'm just gonna put it out there. This is not my pick for like the most surprising team, but I think the most surprising team for you is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think they're going to win 6 games. I truly
Three.
believe they're going to find a way to win 6 games, whereas you think they're going to win 2 or 3. I think they're going to find a way to win 6, and we can bet something off screen, or we can bring up a bet later. We'll have that conversation another time, but I honestly feel this division is so up for grabs. You truly have no idea what's going to go on with this. I mean, any of
If the
these teams can win.
Buccaneers
I
get
don't think any of us are going to be actually shocked if any of these teams win the division.
if the
So,
Buccaneers get 6 or more wins, I will say on this recording, on that video, that they get 6 wins or more, that you were right. But right now, they're not getting 6 wins.
yeah. Well, hey, again, that's just my feeling on it. I mean, again, this division's gonna suck. We know that
Yeah.
it's not gonna be a great division. There's probably only gonna be one winning record, if they even have a winning record, the winner of the division. So,
It's going to be
you
like
know,
the AFC South.
yeah,
Someone's
or
got
it's
to
gonna be
win
like
this division.
yeah, or it'll be like the NFC East a while back, where the Commanders won it with an 8-9 record or whatever it was. Um, so or the football team, sorry. Don't want to make any upset people out there. Um, but yeah, I feel pretty confident in saying that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will get 6 wins, because as bad as all those teams are, that's a lot of teams that are going to be overlooking all 4 of them. A lot of divisional rounds that are going to go, or divisional games that are going to go either way. I just think by default they're going to get 6. So we'll see. And if they don't, then you know what? I'll be like, hey man, I made a terrible take, and that's what I will say to you if by the end of the season they do not get 6 or more wins. But
All I
with
know
that being
is
said, I still am scared for week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but that could just because I'm a Vikings fan and all of our games were pretty much 1-score wins or we got blown out. So I still have PTSD from last season, so it's kind of just.
I was about to say, for our week 2 preview and our week 1 review, you're in a lose-lose situation because either I'm going to come on to this and say your Vikings are trash, or you see that Tampa Bay's trash. So you're in a lose-lose
Yeah.
situation there.
Well, I mean, luckily for me, there's 17 games in a season, and the first team the Tampa Bay Buccaneers play is the Vikings. So, and I think we can agree that the Vikings are at least an average to good team, you know. So, like if you were to put
Unless
the
you lose
Vikings
today.
in, if you were to put the Vikings in the NFC South, would you say the Vikings win the South?
Yeah.
Like, okay, that's what I meant. So that's what I don't feel any. I don't think that's true. I think if the Vikings win, I come in on a high note, only to be distraught about having to face the Eagles in week 2. Um, and I think that, as I said, the Buccaneers are probably going to get 3 or 4 of those 6 wins against the Saints, Falcons, or the Panthers, and then the other 2 are going to come from like surprise victories against somebody who overlooks them, like the Colts did against the Chiefs last year.
I just don't feel like the Colts still have some good pieces on that roster. I just don't see it with the Buccaneers. So, but
That defense, man. If they stay healthy, that's all I gotta say.
moving
We
on to
we
the
we have we have our
NFC,
small bet in place. So with a terrible division. So
all right,
uh
moving on to the NFC West. I think we can agree Cardinals going nowhere this year.
dude, they're my Super Bowl pick. Dude, I was literally about to place a $10,000 bet that they're gonna go 17-0 in the regular season, get the first round bye, win all their playoff games, make the Super Bowl, and win the Super Bowl.
Well, I can probably tell you something. They're going to have the number one and at least a top 5 pick next year. So,
Oh yeah,
if
a
that's
hundred
any
percent.
compensation,
Yeah. This is your division. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick it though. I'm gonna say the 49ers, obviously. That, that's my pick.
I think it comes
I'm
down
not even gonna give
to
a reason. I'm just gonna pick them.
Um, I think it comes down to which team can stay healthy. I just don't see the Rams getting back to what they were 2 years ago. We've seen their horrendous play during the preseason, which I know we've said this week and last week. We take the preseason with a grain of salt. It doesn't really mean anything. Um,
Correct.
but I also feel like if you're getting blown out in all three preseason games, where there's smoke, there's a fire. And when we're hearing from freaking Matthew Stafford's wife that he's not getting along well with the young players, that comes up on a football field. If there's not that team chemistry there, it's just not going to work. So I really feel like it comes down to the 49ers and Seahawks. Now, if the Rams actually pull it together, could they make a surprise move with the division? Sure. They won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. I'm not going to count them out completely, but for my pick, it really comes down to who can stay healthier. Um, I feel like it depends. Can Brock Purdy still be the same player he was last year, or will we
Yes, he can.
come back down to earth? We'll see what happens. Seahawks, it just depends. Can they stay healthy? Which that's a really good question right now. We're seeing injuries in just preseason and training camp. If they can stay healthy and the 49ers have a fallout, which I feel like it's every other year, the 49ers, like half their roster goes down to injuries, or at least all their star players, including Debo Samuel and the others. Christian McCaffrey, we've seen quite a few years with him with the Panthers where he's had injuries. Did well last year. I don't think he had any injuries when he was with the 49ers, but we also agree that there's some type of running back curse with the 49ers where all their running backs get hurt. Maybe that curse and his injury history just cancel each other out. Two negatives equals positive. Um, so right now I'll go with the 49ers, but we'll see how things go during the regular season.
Yeah, I just want to point out that the Vikings did go 0-3 last season in the preseason, just like we did this season. And we went when we had a 13-4 record and we won the North. So I would just like to point out that the preseason does not have really any indication. I do believe we got blown out by default because our backups were Sean Mannion and Kellen Mond, who are two of the worst backups in NFL history. So I do believe that the Rams do have a shot of making the playoffs this year. Again, dependent on health and Matthew Stafford getting control of the team and everything. But I mean, I don't I see them as a number three. Like I see it as a clear San Francisco 1, Seattle 2, Rams 3, Cardinals 4. But I think the Rams do have a shot of at least making the playoffs. Again, the 49ers have to be berated by injuries and they'd have to win. The Rams would have to win like a last season game against you guys, or Gino would have to go down or something like that
Yeah.
for them to win the division, I think. But I'm just saying it's possible. And preseason indication again, it has no indication on how you're going to do in the regular season. Teams have gone blown out and have gone and won divisions or even playoff games and Super Bowls with it. So
All I will say is when the Broncos blow you out 41-0.
the
All
Broncos
I have to
did
say.
that to us last year. Not four. I don't think it was 41, but I don't was the score in last year actually. Let me look that up real quick. Because I remember we had one of our worst games. It was 23-13, but that we had a last field goal in the fourth quarter. But yeah. Anyway, that was also last year.
Okay,
But
so onto our final division. Your division. I'll let you go first.
no, there's no more divisions. No,
No, no, no. You're
I
not
don't.
done with no. You're staying there.
No, no,
NFC North.
I don't think there's any more divisions. We're done. Done, man.
No, 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 no. You're not done yet. NFC
Thanks
North.
for coming to the B Hawks podcast, everybody. I'm messing. Go ahead.
NFC North. What's your pick?
Oh, I'm going first. I went first for your division. You
No,
go
no, no.
first for
You're
mine.
going first.
Well, I went first for your division.
Tyler, go. because I already know who you're gonna pick.
No, you don't actually. It is
My
with the
Bucks is the
NFC North.
Vikings.
It is with the NFC North predictions that I predict the division winner to be none other than the Detroit Lions.
You're lying.
I am not lying. My inner belief tells me that both of those teams, the Vikings and the Lions, are making the playoffs this year. The question is which one will have a home game. And I think that the Detroit Lions, what they proved last year, they're going to have trouble living up to the hype. And obviously they have players out from gambling that they're going to get back uh after a few games in the season, like Jameson Williams. So you have to look at that and know that they could drop some early, especially since their first game is against the Chiefs. However, if they come in and win that game, that's just going to increase the hype around them, but also make them believe in themselves and give them a chip on their shoulders. So, but without even that, all that being said, you saw the late season stretch they went on last year. They went, I believe it was 7 of 9.
Something like
They
that.
won 7 of the last 9 games or something of that nature. I honestly see them doing that again after everybody comes back from suspension. They do a good job under Dan Campbell of keeping people healthy. They always have a great run game. Their offensive line is arguably one of the best in the entire league. Like that is one of the most underrated offensive line because everybody loves to talk about the Cowboys, and the Eagles, but the the Detroit Lions have an insane offensive line across the board. Even their backups are amazing. And so when you look at that team and they're running through walls for Dan Campbell, that he is a ballsy coach, and I think he's just a lovable coach, and he's gonna take them to the playoffs. And I do think that when the Vikings need it most, we always find a way to lose. And since our games against Detroit are 16 and 18, Detroit's going to steal at least one of them, and that's going to be enough for them to win the division if they don't steal both. And then just on a tiebreaker. Like we could both go 10-7, but 2 of our losses were against Detroit. So I would have no issue seeing that. They should have beat us both times last year, but they didn't go for it for whatever reason. But yeah, so I think both of them make the playoffs, no question. But I do actually believe the Detroit Lions uh take the division and not even get into the defense. They were terrible last year, just like the Vikings. But I think they have more pieces there ready to uh, just take things over. And Aiden Hutchinson in year 2, I mean, come on, man. Like they've got the pieces there. They really do. And I think they're just going to take it, man, by force. They're going to bite those kneecaps off.
Tyler, I'm going to pull up your worst nightmare. My pick for the NFC North is the Green Bay Packers.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Yes, sir.
No.
They have a good run game, probably the best in the division. They still have some good wide receivers. I feel like another year they finally get the defense together. We've seen Jordan Love actually be.
Wait, wide receiver. What did you talk about wide receivers? They got Watson. Who else they got? Name one other wide receiver on the Packers besides Watson.
Well, who
You
else
can't.
do you have other
You
than
can't.
Justin Jefferson?
You can't do
Who else do you have other?
it.
That is my turn. Tyler, it is my turn.
You can't do it. But
It
you
is
you
my
just said
turn. Tyler, it's
you just
my
said they
turn.
got.
My
Okay.
turn.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. All right. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll wait.
So you say wide receivers. Well, who else do you have other than Justin Jefferson? You can answer that once you get to your part. But I still feel
I
like they have
said
an
Justin
amazing run
Jefferson's
game.
on the Vikings. You
Tyler, it's
dumbass.
my turn. Tyler, my turn.
Dumb butt.
It's my turn, Tyler.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I feel like Jordan Love is looking good. He spent three something plus years behind Aaron Rodgers. I feel like he's learned stuff out of it. Um, LaFleur knows how to run an offense. He made Aaron Rodgers have 2 years of MVP level. I feel like if he can just have a good year, I feel like that's better than what Aaron Rodgers had last year. And they were one game away from getting into the playoffs. I feel like your Vikings have lost pieces. I feel like the injuries and other issues with the suspensions for the Detroit's going to be bad for them. I feel like they're going to drop a couple games, especially at the beginning of the season. They might be able to pull up out something at later in the season, but I don't feel like they can pull it out fast enough. They might be a wild card team. Chicago, I still feel like they need a few more pieces. They might be a threat, but I don't see them being a threat enough to win the division. Um, but I know you said you've gone through 30 years of MVP level quarterbacks. Tyler, I'm sorry, you might be going through another 10 to 15, and you're just going to have to deal with it.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah, yes, sir.
No, I don't see it. Well, no, I just can't believe that you tried to say Justin Jefferson's on the Green Bay Packers because multiple things with that. If he wasn't on the Vikings, we would have way more losing records than we did. We'd have actually probably a top 5 draft pick a couple years ago. And not only that, we definitely would not have made the playoffs last year, let alone win the division. And the Green Bay Packers probably would have won a Super Bowl in the past couple of years if that was the case. So, what I said to you was name another receiver on the Packers besides Watson. And you just had a bunch of time to look it up, so go ahead and tell me who else is on the
No, just
receiving core that you say is
I'll,
so great.
I'll let you. You have a lot of tension there, bud. So let it out. Let it out while I'm still looking.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead and look up your Romeo Dobbs. You know, all dude, not Van Ness is the edge rusher, but that tight end they got in the draft. Whoever you want to look up, they got their guys, whatever. But they're unproven. Watson's the only proven guy. He had 1 year. 1 year, man. You can't be out here saying, "Oh, they got a great receiving core," and even their tight end. Their tight end is unproven. So they have a first round draft pick, I believe, in their tight end. So he's probably going to be good. No doubts about that. But they traded away Robert Tunyon last year. He's on the Bears now. So they don't even they have one proven guy in Christian Watson. That's it.
So they
So
also probably have the best run game in the
I didn't dispute.
NFL.
I didn't dispute you on that. I didn't. I had said nothing about your problem with the run game. I said yes, they do. When you said they have a great run game, I had no quarrel with that. But you said they have a great receiving core, and that's what made me stop because I'm like, okay, all their tight ends and receivers minus Christian Watson are new guys, pretty much, or unproven. So don't you go saying they have a proven receiving core.
I said they
That's
have a
like
good
saying
receiving
that's like
core.
saying the Vikings running back room is the best running back room in the NFL. When in reality we have Alexander Madison as our starter, who's been
I said they
Dalvin
had a
Cook's
good
doppelganger.
receiving core, not proven. But
But they got one guy. They got one guy. One guy.
so it's also you have running backs can be used as wideouts as well. AJ Dillon's been used as a receiving back.
Aaron Jones more than AJ Dillon. Aaron Jones is their receiving back. Granted, they can use AJ Dillon, but that's more of the dump off screen game. Aaron Jones can catch a 70-yard touchdown pass. That's the thing. See, no the
Prove my
teams, man.
point. Prove my
If
point
you're
for
gonna
me,
pick the
Tyler.
Packers,
Prove my point
if
for me.
if you're gonna pick the Packers, at least know what you're talking about. That's all I ask, man. At least know what you're talking about. I know what I'm talking about when I pick the 49ers to go against you. Their whole damn roster's like better than your roster. So I mean, granted, the 49ers crushed us as well. So it's not like I'm not trying to throw shade at you or anything like that. But we're over here talking about the Packers. Again, great run game. understandably, they have quite possibly the greatest running back 1 and 2 in the league right now, tied with some other teams, possibly. So again, but you got Jordan Love, also an unproven quarterback with one proven receiver. What was Aaron Rodgers' main problem last year, and probably one of the main reasons why they didn't go to a playoff? He had all those young receivers and apparently had all that offseason drama, blah, blah, blah. But Aaron Rodgers is a diva, so who really cares? But he had to teach all these young guys how to run their routes. They didn't understand his hand signals, all that type of stuff. He had to work them to whatever you want to call it. He had to get him there. So
And
they
now
had a little
they're
mini
there.
streak in the middle of the season. Christian Watson's there.
And guess what?
Might I need to remind you,
Jordan Love is not as much as a diva as
Alan
Aaron
Lazard
Rodgers.
was on Rodgers' wish list and is now on the Jets. And as I said before, Robert Tunyon is now on the Bears. That's three guys. Only one of them is still on the Packers.
Tyler, your main point about the Packers is that they do not have a good, or they will not have good quarterback play. I believe they will have good enough quarterback play to get them there.
Now, hold on. Again, my issue was with your receiving core. What your statement with the receiving core. I also think that you have all these young receivers who still need to get acclimated to the game. Not to mention the young tight ends as well, because Mercedes Lewis also left, so it's not like they have a veteran there to teach them. Christian Watson's that wide receiver one on that team. Then after that, you have no idea who's going to be there. With Jordan Love at the helm, can he command the offense? Because the question is, when teams stack the box and figure out how to stop Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, can they step up and get it done? I have yet to see that. And I think, I mean, who can see it? It's his first year. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying you're venturing into the unknown very much so by saying that he's going to go out there and ball out
I
when
can
he's
say
only
you
got
did
one
the
true
same
receiver.
thing for the Titans.
Well, Ryan Tannehill's a veteran quarterback. D
And
Hop
what has he done?
is a superstar wide receiver. Derrick Henry is the running back that normally over all the years everybody has to try and stop.
We haven't seen Ryan Tannehill last a whole season in what, a year or two?
Yeah.
Like he's been hurt every single season the past few years. Like there's been at some point where he's been knocked up. They have been trying to get rid of him to replace him with the past two drafts, and they failed both times because we've seen Malik Willis and the guy from Kentucky, I believe, um, where that quarterback they got last year or this year, whatever, is struggling to beat Malik Willis out of the position when we saw Malik Willis last year suck.
Yeah. But the thing is though, other than AJ Brown
Well,
beforehand, who have they had at receiver? They've had one receiver. But now they got D Hop, and no hate on AJ Brown. AJ Brown's a great receiver, but D Hop is one of those top five, top three guys who is a complete game changer when he's on the field. AJ Brown's a great receiver. Again, no hate. He definitely is a great receiver. He's definitely top 10, top 15 at least. But he's not on D Hop's level. D Hop brings a new caliber to that team.
but can D Hop stay healthy?
He did last season. Granted, he was suspended for a lot of the beginning of it, but
Because he had to take certain drugs or prescriptions or whatever to get back from an injury.
now he was on performance enhancing drugs at the beginning of the season because they
Well,
found
no,
out the
it was
previous
coming
year.
off an injury though. That the reason why he was taking it was because he was coming off an injury and he needed them.
Mm, gotcha. But
Because I
that
remember
also
reading
wasn't
that.
still wasn't with that was still the prior year though, and on the Cardinals he did that. That's still half season. So I'll give you that. Maybe the drugs were part of the problem. I never know. But I think when it's when you said that they have the great running game and the great receiver core, that's where I was just like, okay, that
Okay.
should not be your reasons. If you're going to talk about the Packers winning the division, you say they have a great running game and they have a great defense.
Okay.
Those are the 2 points
I
you should be making.
misspoke. Okay. So moving on to our last two topics real quick. because we've probably been here for a while.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
who do you think will be? Shoot, we'll go for this one first. The worst teams in the league this year. Who do you think is going to have that top 1 to 3 range of picks, or 1 to 5?
Well, I think it's going to be the Cardinals either way. It's just will the Cardinals get the first round pick from themselves or from the Texans?
First pick of the
In
draft,
my
you mean?
opinion. So I think the Cardinals are going to actually get it themselves because they've shown in this offseason that they just want to ship out guys for any amount of value at all. Like, even if it's not anywhere close to what the guy's worth, they're just willing to ship out guys.
They're in complete rebuild.
They're complete rebuild. The Texans at least have already put some pieces in place. So I say the Cardinals take the first round pick for themselves, and then they get another top 5 pick from the Texans.
Yeah, I
Cardinals
feel
are
like
gonna be a good drafting team. If they can draft well, they're gonna have a good team in a few years.
especially with the Cardinals, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Kyler Murray. I forgot who they drafted a few years ago, the year right before Kyler Murray. Um, but it'll be interesting to see if we have another type of scenario where if they have the number 1 and 2 picks, do they trade the number 1 pick to somebody like the Bears did with the Panthers this year and get some draft pieces in to build up a roster around Kyler Murray, or do they trade out Kyler Murray like how some people wanted Justin Fields to be traded out and started going Caleb Williams? It's really going to be interesting to see that, especially if the Cardinals still have issues with Kyler Murray's like dedication. We know the whole drama from last year with the video game contract. Um, so I feel like Cardinals is will have probably 2 top 5 picks. I feel like the Texans. I don't know why they traded. I think it was Brandon Cooks to the Cowboys. Is that the
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
Um, I feel like that would have been a good wide receiver for CJ Stroud to have as like a safety weapon. Um, but I feel like they're starting to gain some pieces. I feel like they'll be missing that pick next year when that's still a top 5 pick where they could have either gotten some more draft capital for it or have given another big piece to either side of the ball, whether that's offensive line or somewhere on the defense or a big weapon. So we'll
yeah.
see how that ends up. But I feel
I
like,
don't think they regret it though if Will Anderson does win
yeah,
Defensive Rookie of the Year or has
definitely.
that type of season.
If Will
So
Anderson proves that he was worth that pick, I don't think they'll have an issue at all. It just depends on how well he does. I feel like CJ Stroud could be good. I feel like they just need to build up the offense. Um, I feel like the Panthers, if they don't get the offensive line in place, I feel like they could be one of those bottom tier teams. You and me disagree about the Buccaneers. Um, AFC, we have the Texans, Colts probably. I think Anthony Richardson's probably just going to need a year or two just to build himself up in the league. This Jonathan Taylor, I feel like Jonathan Taylor could have been great for Anthony Richardson to have because I feel like both like I feel like I'm not familiar with Anthony Richardson as much as the other rookie QBs, but I feel like the read option or play action could be great for that if they could have kept Jonathan Taylor, but I don't think that's going to happen. I feel like Colts will be down there. If the Sean Payton Russell Wilson experiment does not go well, I feel like the Broncos will be back in the top 5 again next year.
yeah. I and that also goes back. I'm looking at the AFC South because obviously the Texans and the Colts are those types of teams, but that also is more of a mind. It's like you got 2 rookie quarterbacks,
Yeah.
which is another reason why my pick for the Tennessee Titans makes more sense because the Jaguars have no game tape on the 2 rookie quarterbacks. So I'd say that overall, if you're looking at the Jaguars defense versus the Tennessee's defense, Jacksonville's probably easier to pick apart. Jacksonville is going to score on you and just outscore you, whereas Tennessee is going to try and hold you and try to keep it at least a little bit closer so they don't have to score as many points. That's kind of how those teams go. Again, Mike Vrabel versus Doug Peterson. But it's funny how much similarity I see between them and the NFC North. They're just missing that one other good team in there to have like the Packers, the Vikings, and the Lions in there. If the Colts were good, then they'd essentially be the NFC North comparison, because the Jacksonville Jaguars are kind of like the Vikings. They have a potent offense, but their defense is questionable. And then you look at the Tennessee Titans. They got a great running game and a great defense. That's the Packers. All the AFC South is missing is the Lions. So it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I do see that. And then yeah, I think it's very clearly the Cardinals. The Panthers, again, the NFC South, with that, whether we agree on the Buccaneers or the Panthers or not, the division itself is just so up for grabs and so wonky that that's just where they get a few of those wins from. Like it's very hard, just like it's hard for a team to go undefeated or even just to win 13 games or more. It's also really hard to win only 2 games.
Yeah.
Like heck, the Texans couldn't even do it last year and they lost the number 1 pick to the Bears. And the Bears won 3 games. So I mean, I really think it's really difficult to say like, oh, they're only going to get 2 wins, when in reality, like that's a hard thing in and of itself. So that division being as wonky and up for grabs as it is, I think they get wins against each other. Like the Buccaneers and the Panthers probably split. They probably split with the other teams as well in that division.
I think
So
especially a part of it, it's hard to go, what we call it, winless without, especially if you have like a rookie quarterback or a quarterback you think you can build on the future with. It's hard to go winless with that because you might get 1 or 2 games, especially if it's a good player. Um,
yeah.
but I think we do agree that if there is a team that will go 0-17 this year, the best chance to go on 17 is the Cardinals. I just don't think
Yeah.
they have really any pieces anywhere on that roster that can win them a game.
If they win against the Seahawks, though, I'm gonna laugh. That'll be such a good week if that happens.
Do you face the Cardinals?
We do not. We face the Niners,
Okay. I was going
so
to say is
I
that
don't have to worry about that. My
if you
my
played the
worry is
Cardinals, that
against the
would be the team you
Buccaneers.
lose to.
My worry is against the Buccaneers. Mine's not the Cardinals. You got to play the Cardinals twice, my boy. So have
Well,
fun.
who do they have left? Is Buda Baker even still on that squad?
He is. He
Okay.
is. We did an interview with them in Minnesota. So
That might be the only one left on that squad that has any good potential. Like
hey,
he's a
their
great
running
player.
back
I'm
room's
not.
not bad. They got Rondale Moore. They got some pieces. They got Marquise Brown. Like they have some pieces. They could surprise, but I
They also
agree.
lost J.J. Watt. They lost DeAndre Hopkins. Kyler Murray's going to be out for majority of the season, if not all of it.
Again, we're arguing over minute details.
Yeah.
Like we both agree on the underlying. They could go 0-17. I'm just saying that, like you said, if the Buccaneers beat me, you're gonna laugh at me on the show, if they beat the Vikings. Sorry, I'm saying that I don't know if I'll stop laughing at you on the show for about 2 or 3 weeks if the Cardinals beat you.
Unless the Buccaneers beat you, and then you have no excuse. So, all right, moving on to our last topic, best teams, which we can already probably knock the Chiefs off the list where they will probably be a contender, but who do you think will be those other teams, especially in the NFC where it's a lot of mediocrity crowding around that where you have the 49ers and the Eagles near that top, but that middle of the pack is kind of hazy where AFC it's just going to be cannibalistic in nature where you'll have the good teams just all beat each other where whoever gets out
Yeah.
won't be the best of the best.
I mean, I got to stick to my guns and just say the Eagles and the 49ers. I mean, that again, roster staying healthy. They're the most complete teams all around. So I mean, I think those are the teams. I mean, the Cowboys. Again, I've said to you, I don't think they'll win the division, but I think they could sneak their way in. Do I trust Dak in those moments? Absolutely not. Like in the playoffs, I don't trust him. Um, I think he's just more interception prone Kirk Cousins. I really do think the comparison's there. Uh, so he's above average quarterback. Throws a lot of picks. So, um, but they could very well find themselves in the mix. The NFC North could be surprising. The Lions had the capability to beat just about anybody last season. They could find themselves again there, even if they come in as a wild card. They could have that same potential that nobody wants to face them, and everybody was glad you guys made the 7th seed instead of them. So last year, you could see that. Uh, the Green Bay Packers may very well have good players, and I would hate that, and I would be absolutely devastated. But they very well may be able to build off that great run game, and Jordan Love may be able to develop nicely, and I would hate everything about it, and I would die inside. But uh, even my Vikings could have a chance to come in there, whether it's as a wild card or the 3 or 4 seed, whatever it is. They could cause some noise if we actually, call the right plays. I mean, this is what's big. It's hard to pick because I was gonna pick my Vikings because we do finally have Kirk Cousins for the first time in his entire career under the same offensive play calling and playbook in the second year. He's had different offensive coordinators every single year of his career. It's insane. I think that's what a lot of people forget about him is that he's constantly having to learn a new playbook every single year, whereas other quarterbacks get to at least stay with the same play calling. So that could very well help everybody out on that. Like that's going to help the receivers. That's going to help the offensive line. That's going to help everybody. So I really think without injuries, Minnesota could even cause some noise. And that just feels weird to me saying that because I know how much my team likes to choke in big moments. But I really do think they could at least win a playoff game or two if they get there and play calling is good enough and Brian Flores brings the defense up. Nobody from the NFC South is screaming to me that they're going to be great.
Yeah.
And I think you guys are kind of looking at the same thing as us in a way. Like, I mean, sure, you still have the same play callers, so like that's not the same issue. But as far as offensive potency, you guys definitely have that.
Yeah.
I feel a lot better about your depth than the Vikings' depth. For people getting hurt, but I mean, I think that both of us would rely heavily on our offenses to do the job. And I could see our teams making some noise, but I don't see like these other teams I've been talking about. I really think it's the Eagles, 49ers, and surprise pick of the Lions of people who could actually go the farthest because I think the Lions would get there by the surprising people route. They sneak in through the wild card and then they just start beating teams.
For the best rosters, I will go with the Eagles and the 49ers. It's just really, especially we talked about the 49ers earlier, it's just going to depend on injuries. And I hate to bring up injuries. It's a bad part of the game. And I feel like a lot of people bring it up and it tanks every single argument because you could always just say injuries and no one can argue it. But especially with the 49ers, we have seen so many years of when everyone thought, okay, they will be the team to beat in the NFC, and then injuries just tanked the whole team. You've gotten rid of Jimmy Garoppolo, which that used to be the if Jimmy Garoppolo goes down to injury, and it was always a win, not if your season tanked. Um, Brock Purdy was good when he came in for relief, but we saw him get injured against the Eagles in the NFC Championship. And it's also, can he continue that? We'll see the rest of their roster. Eagles, I feel like they can still be pretty good. If the Cowboys don't win the division, I feel like the Eagles will be right there behind them to take it. And if not, they would be a very high wild card team. Um, so NFC, the rest of it just gets muddled with I don't know if mediocrity is the right word, but nobody really there you could go after.
There's tiers like the
Yeah,
the Eagles, the Cowboys, and the Niners are kind of the S tier of the NFC, and then the Seahawks, the Vikings, the Lions, and maybe the Packers, depending on Jordan Love's development, are kind of like that A tier.
I
The
think
Giants might be in there too.
a part of the
So
problem with the NFC is even with the Eagles and the 49ers, every team in the NFC, you can look at each team and every roster and pinpoint some specific issue that could easily keep them from going past the NFC Championship, where you have teams in the AFC where if they get to the AFC Championship, it's not that much of a surprise. There's nothing like you look at the Bills, you look at the Chiefs, you look at the Bengals, you look at the Ravens, and those type of teams. You look at Miami, where if they don't go far in the playoffs or even make the playoffs, that looks like a disappointment of a season. Where you have the NFC, where nobody is really expected to be that good. If the 49ers don't get there, then you could probably say that's a disappointment. Cowboys are always saying they go to the Super Bowl, but they're not.
they're always a disappointment.
Yeah,
It's
that's been
great.
waiting to happen, if you will.
And that's one thing that the Vikings and Seahawks fans can always agree on is our hatred of the Cowboys.
Yeah,
So we won't shy away from that on our channel. Um, and it's funny because we're both supposed to hate the Packers too, but yet my co-host decides to pick them to win the division this year, and on a quarterback in his rookie season, no less. So that just bothers me. I thought we were friends. So
it's more of the Packers hate the Seahawks because of the amount of emotional damage we've caused them. So more of the Packers' bad memories are good memories from me, aka Fail Mary and onside kick, and then
right,
Jermaine Curse um, down the field for a touchdown to get us to the second Super Bowl in a row. So their
yeah,
pain is our I don't know what you call it, but
their pain is
what
your
about
gain.
you? Yeah, their pain is my gain, while you just are more just in pain.
Yeah, see, and I could say this years ago, like the 49ers to you guys now is exactly how the Packers used to be to us. It was just we knew they were always better. Like, assuming they stayed healthy, of course, because the 49ers, again, we bring up injuries, but like the 49ers were just always that team that was better than you guys at as of the past couple years and
Yeah.
now. Whereas before then, the Packers just were always that team. The Bears jumped in once, we jumped in once, and other than that, it's been Packers pretty much the whole decade. So, and the Lions jumped in way early 2010s, but anyway, but that's besides the point. But with the Packers not even having a proven quarterback or a proven roster for that matter, besides defense in the running game, for you to just pick them, that hurts, man. But okay, looking at the AFC strong teams, there's a ton of strong teams across the board. So I mean, obviously Kansas City is the team to beat. Jacksonville could possibly sneak in there. Um, I'm looking at the Ravens, the Bengals, the Steelers. That whole division is going to be interesting. Same with Bills, Jets, and Dolphins. So I think it just depends on who stays healthy, who can stay consistent, because that's been a problem for Josh Allen. Uh, so who stays on the field, who stays consistent, who I think that's the whole discussion there. So really, it's could be anybody, but I think we'll probably do some segments throughout the season. Maybe every quarter or so
Yeah.
of the way through, we'll kind of be like, okay, we can reevaluate. Every team based off of whatever criteria we want to use. But I
Though,
think that's pretty much what we're
just one
doing.
last point. Honestly, I would not be surprised. Now, this is going to be a hot take. Where, depending on who you are, I could see the Bills potentially not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I can see it too.
I
But
could see that division cannibalizing on itself, where maybe Miami and the Jets, one or the other, winning the division, the other getting a playoff spot, but the Bills having been cannibalized in that division, missing out on a wild card spot entirely.
Exactly. For those of you who don't know, actually, which is all of you because only Matt and I have talked about it. Matt and I have actually went through and picked a lot of the wins and losses for a lot of the teams. We're not going to do that for the sake of the show because it would take way too long. And also to fill it out itself is also very long. We never even finished. But we got to the Bills because obviously alphabetical order, the Bills are one of the first few teams up there. And we were just looking at all the games they have to play in their schedule. And I remember both of us just going, wow, it is hard to find definite wins on this schedule. And so I don't think that's even a hot take. I think people who are saying, oh, the Bills are a shoe in, they're going to be the division winner. I think they're going to be in for a tough season, quite possibly.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
but
Well, I think that'll do it for this week.
I think that will, yeah. I again got a little heated. I didn't think you were gonna pick the Packers right out of the gate and piss me off. You talking last week about me trying to piss you off the first week, but I didn't. So I'll come at you with something next week, maybe. We'll see how that goes. But good old spirited debate. Matt and I are friends. We joke with each other a lot, so there's no hard feelings here. Just gotta hope my Vikings can prove stuff on the field. But we appreciate everybody who's listening to VHawks podcast, and we appreciate all these new subscribers that we've gotten. We actually got more than we thought. We thought we would have 0 views and 0 subscribers. I believe we're at 9 subscribers and around 50 views, Matt, I believe it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, something like that. So definitely happy to have that following and hope we can keep growing. And we definitely have more content coming out. We are going to post again next week to preview week 1 of the regular season. So definitely stay tuned for that video. We'll probably include a few other things in there. We do plan on getting more uh, of a debate type thing going on as we are obviously, NFC rivals. So we do want to get that kind of out there, make it a fun podcast and not just an overview news podcast. We're going to try and make that transition partly through. So hopefully you found this a little bit more entertaining than last week's, and just know that we hope to continue to escalate the entertainment value as we go on. So thank you all for sticking with us, and I'll leave it to Matt to close us out.
Sounds good. So, well, if you like the episode, I hope you like, comment, subscribe. If there's anything y'all want us to add, give us a comment. Let us know if there's anything we could do better, if there's anything y'all want to see us do different, anything y'all want us to talk about. NFL always has some news going on, so if there's something y'all want to talk about next week, just let us know. So have a great week, and we'll see y'all next week.